Hey all, welcome to A Fistful of Dice. My name is Matt. I'm sitting here outside of the fabled Golden Arches on my lunch break. It's raining here in Western Washington. I'm sitting in my car and I feel like talking about RPGs. So this is going to be a new episode of For a Few Dice More, the series where I just kind of talk at you about things that are happening in my life related to RPGs, things to expect from the channel, all that good stuff. I've been making a lot of these lately and not a lot of real content. Which is to say, I don't have a lot of free time outside of work and outside of Absolute Tabletop and stuff like that. But I do have some videos in the works, and I've got some Iron Lords of Zakesh that I've been editing. So videos soon. I know I've said that in like 3 videos, but seriously, videos soon. And by soon, I mean, by the end of the year. So giving myself a soft deadline. But there's a few things I want to talk about today, a few things that are going on in my gaming life. The first and probably most exciting is that the Copper Jackals, the new Absolute Tabletop supplement, is coming out a week from today, so that'll be Friday, February 26th. And the Copper Jackals, for those of you who are unaware, are a mercenary group of heroes in the tabletop terror setting of Dragon Grin. And Dragon Grin is a setting where evil has prevailed in the ongoing eternal conflict, and there is a Dark Lord who rules over a majority of the continent, and the Copper Jackals are one of the few sort of points of light in this setting. So they're like high-powered Magitech mercenaries. They're imbued with ancient magical metal known as Titan Copper. They're badasses. It's like the Expendables meets D&D, basically. So anyway, we have a supplement coming out next Friday that is all about the Copper Jackals, how to play a Copper Jackal, how to run an adventure for Copper Jackals. It's got all sorts of cool stuff in it. It's going to be like our biggest supplement yet, even bigger than the Convocation. So we've got our work cut out for us, but it's looking good so far, so I hope you guys will enjoy that. So anyway, that's going to be up on AbsoluteTabletop.com on February 26th, so definitely check that out. The other thing that I want to talk about is that I've been reading a new book. Well, not new, it's new to me, but it's Ready Player One. And Ready Player One, for those of you who are unaware, I'm late to the party. It's a book about it's kind of a dystopian future where a majority of mankind spends their time inside this giant virtual reality simulation called the Oasis. And the Oasis was programmed by one of us. Is a nerdy guy, played video games and D&D growing up, grew up in like the 80s and the 90s, and so the book is just chock full of awesome nerdy references. One of the early quests that the main character has to go on is a digital recreation of the Tomb of Horrors. So there's lots of little things about that. I love it because it's all kinds of video games that I grew up playing, video games that were before my time, D&D stuff. There's some stuff like related to the band Rush, is one of my favorite bands. So the thing about this book is that it's one of those things that has the potential to be too heavy-handed, where it's like, oh, look how nerdy we are, like all of these kind of nerdy references. And it almost, when I started reading it, it was almost like, oh, I don't know about this. Like, it felt very like shoehorned, like, oh, let's try and work in as many 80s references as possible. Like the character's like, I walk in the room like Tom Cruise in Risky Business or something like that. Like it's a lot of that kind of language where it just kind of points to something related to the 1980s or nerd pop culture or anything like that. But even though it started off a little bit like, I don't know about this, I have absolutely devoured this book. Yes, it has a lot of nerdy references, but it's all very genuine. It's not like Big Bang Theory where the character goes, this is just like Doctor Who in episode blah, 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 when this thing happens, and that's the joke for some reason. Like, everyone's like, he said something nerdy. Oh, that's so nerdy. It's more like, here's something that I'm passionate about as an author, something nerdy that I'm going to include in this book in a very like real, tangible way. So it's very cool, and apparently they're making a movie out of it, which I was unaware of, but apparently Steven Spielberg is attached to it. And I can imagine, this is perfect for a movie, so I think it'd be pretty cool to see that. But for me, as a D&D player, as an RPGer, it's really cool to see those kinds of things in a book like this, and see them described in a real kind of sense. And there's actually a whole section where the author talks about how D&D and RPGs like D&D were kind of the proto-Oasis. Like, this is proto-virtual reality, where you could do anything, be anything, go on quests, you know, stuff like that. Progress as a character, get more power, become more powerful, and develop yourself. And it's the same kind of thing in the Oasis in Ready Player One. So, but yeah, there's some really cool stuff here. That, like, the antagonist of the book is really interesting, the way they introduce the antagonist and have that whole play out. So I'm just about done with it. I think I'm about like 30 or 40 pages away from the end. So it's one of these books that I'm devouring in just a couple of days. Been staying up way too late reading it, so I definitely recommend it. And next on my to-read list is I'm going to be reading Empire of Imagination, which is all about the history of D&D and Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson and all of that stuff. So I will definitely be talking about that at some point too. The other thing I wanted to talk about was I recently purchased a new RPG. Well, new to me. Again, it's been out for many years, but I'm just now delving into it. And that is Numenera. And I don't have it with me. I had it with me at work yesterday. I was on my lunch break just flipping through it. But I absolutely love the book. I haven't played the system yet, and I haven't finished reading it. Obviously, it's like 400 pages. But I've read a lot of the lore stuff. I've read the entire section on the rules and the different character types and stuff like that. And I can tell that I'm going to love this game. The rules themselves, I mean, there's nothing groundbreaking in the rule set. It is kind of cool the way that you can expend effort to increase your chances of doing better at something. So, you know, like in D&D, like, you roll, you add your modifier, and you either hit the DC or you don't. And there's no way that you can, without spending like an inspiration point or something, there's nothing that you can do to better your chances. You know what I mean? In Numenera, you can spend what's called effort, which is basically you reduce a stat by a number of points in order to decrease the DC that you're shooting for. So if you're looking at like a DC 15 and you're like, well, I want to try and reduce that, I'm going to put more effort into it. I'm actually going to reduce my might pool or my might score by 6 and reduce that DC by 2 steps. You know, things like that. So it's really cool. I love that mechanic. But aside from that, I mean, it's a fairly like basic D20 style system where you're rolling the D20. The interesting thing is that there's not a lot of modifiers. Everything affects the DC. So instead of having a DC and then you're rolling, adding your modifier to it, instead, anything that you're good at reduces the DC. So if you're skilled at something, the DC is going to be lower for you. So I've seen a lot of people complain that, like, it doesn't make sense that a DC for breaking down a door should be the same for an 18 strength fighter versus a 9 strength wizard or something like that. It's like, well, that's kind of reflected in the system of Numenera, where the DCs are different depending on what you're good at. So, and I'm planning on doing a full-on like review of Numenera where I like in-depth talk about it and go through the book and stuff. But for now, this is just like my initial thoughts. For me, the standout thing is the setting and character creation. The setting is amazing. It's a sci-fi fantasy setting where the inhabitants of this world are living on the ruins of 8 previous civilizations. So the world is called the Ninth World, and it takes place like roughly 1 billion years into the future. So it actually takes place on Earth, but it's completely unrecognizable as Earth. And I knew about the setting, and I knew the basic premise of it, that it was, you know, it's not post-apocalyptic. Like, it's not like living in the wasteland. You're living on the ruins, on the skeleton of 8 previous civilizations, including our current civilization is one of those worlds. What sold it for me was the idea of Drit. And Drit, and this is such a silly thing, but it was the thing that when I was reading the book, I was like reading the book and I like looked up and like, oh, that's cool. All of the resources of the world, of the Earth, have obviously been harvested at this point, 1 billion years into the future. Like, we've only managed to avoid completely dying out because one of these civilizations managed to stop the sun from going supernova, or stop the ozone from depleting, or move the planet to a safer zone or something like that, or knock asteroids aside as they're flying towards us. But all of the resources have been depleted except for whatever is left over of previous civilizations. And the idea of Drit is that all of the dirt, all of the dust, all of the material in the world is literally powdered remains of a previous civilization. So things have degraded so much, like, you know, a building that's, you know, millions of years old, it's not going to be standing anymore, right? It becomes dust, it becomes dirt, it returns to its raw ingredient. And that's what dirt and dust is in Numenera, is this stuff called drit. It's literally like powdered metal and stuff like that. And when I was reading that, I was like, shit, man, that's cool. Like, that's the coolest thing. And it's something that I've never thought of before, but it makes sense, you know? It makes sense from a you know, realistic standpoint, and also it's pretty fantastical, it's pretty sci-fi, that the ground, the soil itself, you pick it up and it sifts through your fingers. That's the remains of a civilization, their buildings, their vehicles, their people, you know, their technological advancements. So that's pretty cool. And I love the idea of the ciphers too. The ciphers are like one-off magic items. I love stuff like that. Like, oh, it's a little bauble that does a very specific thing, but you can only use it once and then it's useless. But stuff like that is like, I live for that in an RPG, where it's like, oh man, I got this thing that can reverse gravity like once a day, or one time, you know, I can reverse gravity in a centralized location. Like that's really cool. So yeah, I'm going to be continuing reading through Numenera, and I'm definitely planning on running some Numenera on the channel and also at home. So hopefully you guys can hear me okay. It's really raining hard here. And then the last thing I want to talk about is there's a new Conan RPG on Kickstarter. It's Robert E. Howard's Conan, Adventures in an Age Undreamed. So already the title is really, really cool. The system itself is a 2d20 roll under system, so you're rolling 2d20s and you're attempting to roll under a stat, kind of like BRP or Call of Cthulhu, but instead of the 2d10, it's 2d20s. And there's actually a 52-page quick start packet on DriveThruRPG that is available totally for free, and the system itself is on Kickstarter. So there'll be links down below in the description for both the quick start PDF and the Kickstarter if you're interested in backing the project. I'm going to try and wrap up here because it's getting too loud for you guys to hear me. But the art for the book looks absolutely phenomenal. The artist Brahm, who's probably most famous for his work in the Dark Sun setting with Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, he's doing the cover art and a lot of the interior art, and he has really captured like the look and feel of Conan's world. So I'm a huge Conan fan. I've talked about that a lot on the channel. It's probably one of my favorite literary characters. I own all the stories. I have a pretty like extensive Conan collection of different Conan bits and baubles and toys and books and all that sort of stuff, comic books. So I will definitely be, I've already backed it, and I'm going to be getting the hard copy, and I'll do a review once it comes in, but that won't be till this summer, I imagine. So, all right, so I'm getting drowned in rain. The world is flooding around me, like big fish style. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this video off and say goodbye to you guys, but I hope everyone's Friday is going well. If you guys have games this weekend, I want to hear about them, so leave a comment below with what you're running or what you're playing in this weekend. And yeah, that's going to be it for me, guys. So everyone, take care, happy gaming all, and I will see you all soon.